Works why it works for you.
How do customers actually make buying decisions? If we can just go deep into that, where does neuroscience comes into the picture, Ankur? I mean, this is your past experience. When users say something and do something else, I think that is where we get to the real truth. The next segment, I mean, we talk about making research relevant to the business.
Let's play a little game. I'll throw some word at you. Whatever comes to your mind first, you give it back to me.
Let's move to the next segment. How can we make our research more agile? So UX and CX with pace.
You use the data and your insights merged together in a very beautiful way to be able to tell the story.
Let's move to the second segment about triangulation, Ankur. Triangulation of data, research, and emotion.
We are the real generation, so we don't have time. Nobody has time. 30 seconds, 1 minute is what we have. So this interview is going to be a little longer. I hope people are engaged. But because सबको तो 1 मिनट की आदत है.
Right. Hello everyone. When was the last time you purchased something online and you thought it was a logical decision, but later you thought it was an emotional one? Maybe a smartphone which you were trying to buy because of its specifications, but later you realized it was your impulse. So that is what we are going to discuss today, the neuroscience of customer decision making. How customers make buying decisions online and offline. I am the founder and CEO at WorksWide. So today we have a very special guest, Ankur Sardana, who is the head of design and research at Tata Digital, and he has 2 decades of experience in this field. Welcome, Ankur. So I would start with asking, how has been your journey in these 2 decades? You have worked with so many companies from OLX, from Samsung, Philips, and so many others. So what has been your experience? How has been your journey, Ankur?
My journey overall in design has been very exciting, Mohit, and thanks first of all for inviting me and getting
It's
me
our
here.
pleasure.
Talking about a topic which is so relevant, I feel at this moment in time, user research really needs to now come out of academics of neuroscience and come into the practicality of neuroscience. Since so many new developments have happened, so many new softwares are available to use neuroscience. Coming back to my experience, the experience has been exciting. As I said, when I started with research, the whole excitement was traveling, talking to new people. Never realized the depth at which research can actually happen. It was only when I went to Philips research where I understood that this requires a very different kind of depth and experience, and how a company which is interested in research can really change the perception of user centricity in a company.
Right. So let's get started. I think let's go deep into that, Ankur. So how do customers actually make buying decisions? If we can just go deep into that, where does neuroscience comes into the picture, Ankur? I mean, this is your past experience. What do you think? I mean, where does neuroscience come into the picture when they make buying decisions?
Well, it starts from the subconscious somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's the limbic system. In neuroscience, you understand that there are hormones which are getting activated in the limbic system, which because of our experiences and memories are residing there and make us take a decision. So the final click that we find is just a manifestation of that subconscious emotion that is stored. And what we get as data is the click.
Right.
But we do not get the emotion behind it. And neuroscience tries to fill that gap, because neuroscience can help us understand at which moment in the customer journey were those hormones released, when the synapse electric circuit started, and at that moment we can realize that there was something else behind that decision. So I think that's where neuroscience comes in, where we as users also do not know why we took a decision. Neuroscience can help us get there.
Right. So you mean design for instinct rather than design for intellect?
Absolutely. Design for instinct, design for emotion, design for subconscious.
Yeah.
And we are doing it, Mohit. I think everybody is doing it. If you look at the kind of animations and micro interactions that are being fed into all the daily apps today, what are they really doing? They are hitting your dopamine somewhere, which in turn is taking you to a place where you take quick decisions. You're not realizing that you're taking quick decisions because there's so many animations available on that page. And that is also kind of influencing your decision making, and that's again the power of neuroscience.
Perfect. And I think with the technology at pace, there are tools available like to do sentimental analysis, to do journey analysis. I think all those also help you understand the customer behavior. I think that is gonna help understand the instinct like how customers are feeling.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
perfect. So let's move to the second segment about triangulation, Ankur. Right. So triangulation of data, research, and emotions. So what is your experience? If you can just throw some light on this approach, what is triangulation of these three elements, right? And how you have been using this in your past few companies to make the customer success in terms of CX or UX.
Yeah. So, a relevant question. I don't think we have cracked the code yet, Mohit. We are still trying. But if I look at the triangulation of these things, let me give you an example to, you know, let's say there is a site, a fashion commerce, e-commerce site. They introduce a new feature in their product detail page, PDP as we call it. In the product detail page, they introduce a new feature which is studio. So you can go inside the studio and you can look at the details of the cloth.
Yeah.
Or you can have a model there who is wearing and walking, like we have in Chinese websites. So you have the studio, which is a separate feature which has been introduced. Now the feature is launched as a beta, and there is data coming in. Data will tell you that the people who are going to the studio are actually dropping off more.
Right.
Hypothetically, let's say that is the scenario. So as a product manager, your instinct will be band kar do. Let's shut this down, then we'll figure out.
Yeah.
Because we are losing business here.
Absolutely.
We wanted this feature to get more people, but now we are losing people. But if we had the power of neuroscience to see that in that journey of the studio, where is the immersion happening? Where is the user coming out of immersion? For example, say if there were different images and videos, by the end of it, the person is coming out of it. But at which point did the dip start? Say you realize that a zoomed in image of the cloth was the point where the dip started.
Right.
And then the third part comes in. You ask the person, ask the user, why did that image make you feel bad or worse? If you would have directly asked the user without this emotional analysis about, did the studio work for you or not, they would say the studio didn't work.
Right.
But now that you know that in this part of the journey, the user also did not know that this was the point where the dip started.
Right.
And now you show this data to the user and say, see, your dip started here at this zoomed in image of the cloth. Why did it happen? And then the person tells you, oh, it looks very coarse. I don't look at it so close.
Yeah.
I look at it from this distance, and this looks like too close for comfort. And that is why I feel it's not clear, or it is not the same thing as I'll get. Now that's what you want to know as a product manager. But it wouldn't have happened if you did not have the emotional analysis to see where the dip started, because the user himself or herself would not be able to tell you why they took that decision. So I think that's the power of triangulation. You have data, you have the user journey, and you have then you talk to the person as well. So you have all these three tools with you: emotional analysis, data, and qualitative research.
So what, why,
These
and
three.
how, all three are being covered.
Yes, absolutely.
Pretty much.
Absolutely.
Right? You collect your data, from
Right.
data to your information, and information to insights.
Correct.
And you translate those insights into your strategy. I think that
Absolutely.
is what we are talking
Absolutely.
about, right?
Absolutely.
So I think there is a saying, I keep hearing that. I mean, users say something and do something else.
Absolutely.
I think that is where we get to the real truth.
So you're absolutely right. If you look at the polls of elections all over the world,
Yeah.
if people what they say would do, a lot of these leaders wouldn't have been there.
Absolutely.
Similarly, when we go for surveys, you ask questions. I always tell my team that take it with a pinch of salt. To go deeper, these questions will not help, and we'll come to more discussions later as to how we can go deeper into this qualitative research.
So that was the next question, Ankur. So what, why, and how are certainly very important aspects of triangulation in research, right? If we go deep in qualitative research, how can we actually understand what customers are feeling and how customers are feeling? How can we actually understand that? How can we deep into qualitative research? Do you guys use any particular approach or a methodology to do qualitative research?
It's an approach, you can say. It's not a established tool or a process as such, but the underlying factor that we go in with is let's bring in play. Let's go with a gamified pedagogy to get what we want to get. Now, let me unpack this for you. Let's play a little game.
Okay.
Okay. I'll throw some word at you. Whatever comes to your mind first, you give it back to me. Okay. So I'll throw a word. Whatever first word comes to you, just say it back. Cloth,
Wearing,
disturbance,
noise,
shopping.
online,
Now, if we were to record these words and just ask you back, why did you say these words? Why do you think
Yeah.
you said these words? In this gamified way,
yeah,
you have already started falling into, a place where you are a little more comfortable.
you can say that, yeah.
Because what happens is you are following the rules. जो मैंने आपको rule बताया, you will start following the rule
Yeah.
and you will stop analyzing your answers if we go into that zone.
Yeah,
So we have this, for example, another tool that we use for again mind mapping.
Yeah.
We would go with this large sheet of paper, which will have these blocks of areas that we want to talk about today.
okay.
So they, for example, again, if we are sticking to grocery shopping, there'll be, different aspects of grocery shopping there, speed, the behavior of the person who delivered, blah, 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 some things like that. And then we'll have these stack of images, very
Okay.
different diversified images. And we'll ask the users to place those images on those areas.
Okay.
Now they would place it, and the interview has not started yet. This is the first activity. And then we'll ask them, why did you place those images? Mohit, the way the interview then starts is on a different level altogether. You have gamified the whole thing in a way,
Experience.
the experience, and they realize it's not a normal question answer interview that we are going to have. It is a conversation which will be deeper, where they can feel comfortable and relaxed. So I think this is an approach we use quite often. We use other techniques as well, which are established, which are like, we give them money and say, okay, you have to prioritize these few features. How would you prioritize? Instead of
Like a
asking
card
them,
sorting exercise.
card sorting size with addition of some money in it, like
Okay.
you're playing a game. Instead of just card sorting, you have stakes in it. So you start thinking of the stakes and your guard is down.
And I think there comes the emotion in this game, because you talked about a very interesting concept of gamification, and I think largely surveys have been very popular technique in research, right? But I think those are very kind of monotonous, boring, and kind of it doesn't engage the user in a natural way. It doesn't provoke their mind in a natural way. So I remember, I mean, we also keep doing the field studies, and we used to give them Figma prototypes. Hey, can you just play around with it?
Yeah.
How can you buy, let's say for an e-commerce site, how can you buy your product from this? Try that out so that we can see them buying online, right? But I think gamification, that also probably could be one example of it. But gamification really, I think, provokes their mind in a more natural and engaging way.
Absolutely, and co-creation as well.
Yeah.
So we sit with them and say, we'll draw what you'll tell us to draw, and let's draw together.
Yeah.
So things like that, where you can co-create, you can gamify the experience. So this also requires some skill set from the researchers.
Yeah, it's both ways.
And I was telling you before the interview, that I feel really that in the past, the peak of research actually came and went and going down.
Yeah.
And it is also because as researchers, we did not up our game. And I think that this is what we can do with neuroscience, with articulation of insights in the proper way, researching in a more deep way. We need to get our game up, really.
So do you guys use any tools for gamification, or is just kind of a prototype?
So tools is we use prototypes definitely, but we create our own tools as well. When I say tools, they are physical tools. So say, for example, we create a Ludo, which is a different kind of Ludo.
Okay.
So you're playing, but the Ludo has things which are around what we want to ask.
Right.
And we'll try to gamify the whole thing. So if we want to understand a customer journey in a hotel scenario or travel scenario, we'll actually create that journey and we'll ask people to go around and play around. Where would you put the smileys? Where would you put so gamifying the whole experience and then getting into a question answer scenario.
That's very engaging.
Or an FGD. Absolutely. So what happens by the first 20 minutes, you have warmed them up. They feel safe. They feel that we are talking a different language. It's not a normal research. They really want to go deeper. They open up.
No, absolutely. I think that's very engaging. I think they share their real insights. I mean, how they feel, not just from mind but from heart also, how they actually behave, right? Okay, good. So if we just move on, right? The next segment, I mean, we talk about making research relevant to the business. And honestly, I mean, this is a very common question from our customers. And I think I feel there is a disconnect between our research reports and, the business KPIs. Sometimes, the research reports do not tie up with the business KPIs. I think there is a gap between those.
Yeah.
What is your take on that? I mean, how can we make user research or customer research more relevant for the business outcomes, because that is what it matters, right? So what's your take on that, Ankur?
This hits close to my heart because I faced this so many times,
Yeah.
and I've learned it the hard way.
Yeah.
Because I also started as somebody who was running more on emotions
Yeah.
and not able to understand that why is the CEO not getting what I'm trying to say? When the user has said this, we have clearly identified the problem, but it's still not. They feel it's a good thing that you have figured out this insight from the field, but still not making them take those important decisions. And I've realized we were speaking the wrong language. I was speaking Mandarin and the guy understood Spanish. It's almost that big a difference. Imagine a person who has been in a certain kind of scenario all his or her life, not interacted with the design or research team before.
Yeah.
So now, and here we are coming in with all these videos and verbatims and emotional statements from the field, which are making an impact but not going through. So I think our storytelling needs to also understand what kind of stories they can understand on the other side. So not completely changing the way we do it, but definitely adding in, and that is where the KPIs come in. We need to really understand what the company is looking at. If the company is looking at these 5 parameters for growth today, you can't be talking about something else. The CEO is really concerned about those things at this moment.
Absolutely.
And as a research leader, I need to do my pre-work to understand how this is going to impact that very clearly. This is, I would say, 101. 102 would be the storytelling on top of it. How do you use the data
Yeah.
and your insights merged together in a very beautiful way to be able to tell the story?
Absolutely, and I think this is a takeaway for designers also, to gain business skills also, not
Absolutely.
just think in unidirectional from design perspective. Like sometimes designers get so much immersed in design from
Absolutely.
a UI perspective, from a UX perspective, that we kind of don't think holistically how CXOs or how the growth leaders are thinking from a KPI standpoint, whether it is a sales needle movement, whether it is reducing customer acquisition cost, right? I think it should be top bottom approach. If we have to reduce customer acquisition cost, or if we have to increase the sales, what steps we should take in a design strategy
Absolutely.
via research that will take us there. I think that
Yeah.
is the most important aspect for the business.
I would like to add here that we say that designers are very empathetic.
Yeah.
Are you empathetic to your CEO or your audience
Or to the business, you can
or
say.
to the business?
Yeah.
If you're not, then you could be telling the deepest and the warmest stories from the research, but वो connect ही नहीं करेगा ना.
But we are empathetic to the users,
Yes.
the external users,
हाँ,
but we are not being empathetic to
हाँ,
the internal users,
correct.
who are the actual
who are actually
business stakeholders.
who are actually paying us. So see, we need to understand.
Yeah.
So I do understand the perspective from the design colleges. When we come in with this whole spirit of user is
User
our
research.
God. It's important to do that as well. Maybe at a level when people are coming in, they need to feel that also. Otherwise, they will get corrupted very soon. That is also not required. But the design leaders or the managers of research or research agencies heads, we folks need to understand that, okay, let the junior guys still feel the power of the user, but we need to at least be very empathetic, and the storytelling has to come from us as to
Yeah.
what will they really understand. They'll spend 5 minutes with you. You can't talk about a video which has 20 minutes of user voices. So you'll have to to come to the KPIs
Yes.
very, very, very soon.
Absolutely.
EBITDA is not a word that we need to be fearful of.
Yeah.
15 मिनट लगते हैं, समझ तो लो एक बार क्या है. What is the full form? What does it mean? Why are they saying ATL, BTL all the time? Just understand. So I think that's what we have lagged.
And I think that is the disconnect I was talking
Absolutely,
about. Like, I think that disconnect should be filled in, so that we make, design more impactful for the business. And I think I recall one example from my previous experience where, for a e-commerce kind of company for consumer goods, we have been mandated for increasing average order value of the consumer goods, right? So generally people don't imagine that how will you increase average order value of any consumer goods through CX or UX research or UX design. Generally we don't get into that
Yeah.
aspect, right? So it was a very interesting KPI, because since we are talking about
Right.
business metrics,
Right.
average order value and average order frequency, right?
Absolutely.
So we went to field studies, understood the personas, understood the behaviors of different personas, and kind of put together the insights how they are behaving on different aspects of the e-commerce app or the website, and how they are actually buying.
Absolutely.
Can we influence their buying decisions, right? Maybe we replace a CTA and change it to something else that increases 10% of the average order value, right? You increase the profitability copy in the app, which says 20% profit if you buy at scale. That also increases your average order frequency. Probably more and more customers are tend to buy
Absolutely.
more from that. So I think business KPIs are certainly very important, which we talked about.
I think उसमें ये भी होता है that internal design agent teams, for example, we do not have a circle back in our process. For example, a research team works almost like a consulting mode even inside a product company. So you get a project, you work on it, even if there are KPIs to be measured, you attach to it, but you're not really following up. I find that this is also a very big miss on our parts in design and research, especially in the teams which are inside product companies, that we do not circle back. Even for
Yeah.
agencies coming out from outside or consulting companies coming from outside, how many times they would have been able to go back and ask, okay, तो हुआ क्या?
What was the outcome?
Correct. What was the outcome? We promised this, but did it happen?
Yeah.
And that would give you a lot of peace and satisfaction as a company, consulting company, Mohit, to you and for me as a design manager, that okay, we did deliver also, but I would say 90% of the times, knowing all this, even then I would not circle back and check. We will keep moving, because there's another project. And how do we need really build this in the process, which is a retrospective where you go and check actually what happened, show the proof, that this is
Yeah.
what happened, and then continue.
And
It's
I think-
something like a commonsensical thing, though people don't do.
No, absolutely. And I think there's another challenge in the market is when we say design, lot of people perceive design as aesthetics. For them, it is more UI. For a lot of them, I mean, I'm not trying to generalize, but I think that is something. Again, this business metrics and KPIs come into the picture.
Right.
That are you able to kind of coach your, end users or clients or customers or whatever it is, that it is not about how it looks only, but how it translates to the business. I think that
Absolutely.
is what it matters.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Ankur, let's move to the next segment about how can we make our research more agile. So UX and CX with pace. How can we do that? Because what we have seen is, if I have been a customer, I would expect that I cannot wait for the research for next 6 months. It has to be agile, right? The problem is most of the time research looks academic, and business wants outcomes very fast, right? So how do you see that challenge? How can we address that? What has been your approach in making it more agile?
Very important question again, because it relates back to the thought process which researchers had earlier. In fact, I also had earlier कि थोड़ा घूमने जाएंगे, 3-4 शहर देख लेंगे.
Yeah.
4 city research.
Yeah, field studies.
Field study, 1.5
Yeah.
महीने में आ रहे हैं,
Yeah.
hotels में रह रहे हैं. So, and it changed when I went to Philips, as I said, because if you are not tired by the end of the interview, that means you haven't done it right. You have to be actively listening, and you have to listen through your whole body
Yeah.
as a researcher to be able to do that research properly. And only then can you be called a good researcher. So you have to do that, and then the company is expecting. In fact, I remember calls like this. ठीक है, report बाद में आ जाएगी, but
Yeah.
insights पहले दे दो.
Right.
Report can come after a month. What will I do of that report then? Obviously, if you want the insights earlier than and the report later, so which means that we need to be extremely, extremely agile. We need to understand that the software world, digital world works in sprints. We need to sync ourselves with those sprints as well. We cannot just sit and tools help us. with the tools now, and you know Mohit very well, being in the industry, there are tools which can give you synthesized data very quickly. Translations are available. Insights also are available to a certain degree if you feed in the interviews. ChatGPT is doing so much for us already. So the speed of raw data to insight, although the crafting still has to be done by the researcher, it has become, I would say, 1/10
Yeah.
than what it was. I remember the days when in Excel sheets we used to type,
Yeah.
then sit together, do the card sorting, print things, and do. You don't need to
You
do all
don't need
that
that.
stuff. That
So-
can happen very quickly. Yeah, so you were saying
So I
something.
was saying, I mean, time taken for insights can be cut down, but when it comes to data collection, like you talked about field studies, right? I mean, then don't you think it requires its own sweet time, because you talked about gamification in the previous section, right? So I think gamification. How do you suggest, like, we can cut down the time to research, and especially the data collection piece?
So what we are doing, at least Rohit, we are putting always two timelines at the same time.
Right.
One is a qualitative research, and one is data-based uh, quantitative research.
Okay.
So most researchers we are doing in parallel. There is no way that we can wait for one or the other. So we try to do the qualitative first. That's how we approach it. And the whole focus is on gamification, getting deeper, longer interviews, getting the insights, while data will help us validate most of it. And that's why second. So, and in the middle somewhere, we are able to produce the first draft of the report, which everybody is waiting for,
Okay.
which is like the 2 weeks cut. I don't see anybody giving us more than 2 weeks at, in these times. 2 हफ्ते में सबको रिपोर्ट चाहिए, जो कि पहले 2-2.5 महीने भी होता था. So from that time to now, that is the reduction. So that is one way that we follow, which is do both, so that at some point of time both will converge. That is one way that we are trying to do. And as I said, tools are helping us do that faster and faster. Also, testing really helps. If in the middle of research we realize that there are these counterpoints, can we parallelly also start testing? So which is the third track.
Yeah.
So you have the track which is qualitative research. There is a second track which is quantitative research, survey-based research, where also again I feel the tools have really upped the game. The way we can recruit people now online versus earlier is very drastic.
Yep.
I can choose now the kind of people I want. There are marketplaces available for the users, where users can log in and I can see which kind of people I want. So that is another scenario. And then of course we have the testing scenario. So again, three-pronged approach, and we keep giving first draft, second draft, third draft, and if there are any disturbances, any of them, we calibrate the next research accordingly. So अगर क्वालिटेटिव में कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है तो क्वांटिटेटिव में चेंज करके देख लेते हैं, वहाँ नहीं आ रहा है तो टेस्टिंग में करके देख लेते हैं. सो रिसर्च टीम इज़ नॉट अ सेपरेट टीम. They need to understand the design is happening at the same time. They need to understand the sprint is going the same. They need to participate in the sprint discussions also, not every day, but at least once a week, so that they know what's happening.
Okay.
So that's how another.
But do you also complete the full cycle of research, design, development, and test, and kind of come back in an iterative manner? So you talked about research, and nowadays tools and technologies are cutting down the time to do that research and put together insights much faster. That is, I think, pretty much getting sorted. What customers are expecting are experimental design and seeing whether experiment one is working for them in terms of achieving the outcome they wanted to achieve, or whether experiment two will be helping them
Right.
achieve what they wanted to achieve. And probably there also comes the agility, that you don't take 6 months to kind of say that you will do the full cycle of research and you will then design and then kind of develop and test. By that time they probably will realize, okay, this is not how it is working for them, right? Rather, testing maybe a small module, a small feature, and seeing it with different experiments, taking it back to the customers, asking them the feedback, putting them back in the feedback loop, right? And seeing whether it is working or not. I recall, like, one of our banking customers was asking, Mohit, we want weekly insights. We were little stumped, like, how can we get weekly insights, right? They wanted us to go to the banking branches to see digital banking, channel finance, open banking, and different aspects, and see how customers are kind of behaving, and quickly get back to us on insight reports, and let us put back in the feedback loop, and let our design and development team get started on implementing that experiment one, right? So I think organizations are looking a lot of pace in this space.
Agreed.
So pace in the whole customer experience is really very important.
I agree. I completely agree. And hence the days of we will sit over data in the third week after collection of data is not going to happen now. And you don't need that also. As I said again, I don't want to advertise many tools, but the tools that we're using are pretty good. We don't have to wait for collection of data. The data collection is happening every day. Every single day, I can see the kind of insights being generated.
Okay.
So you can pretty much in a week, you don't need to synthesize separately. That's what I'm trying to say. So the workshop which used to happen earlier, कि नहीं एक हफ्ता पहले डेटा कलेक्ट करेंगे फिर वर्कशॉप होगी उसमें बैठ के करेंगे, वो वर्कशॉप इज गेटिंग डिवाइडेड इनटू एवरी डे.
Customers are not so patient about this.
हम भी नहीं है, कोई भी नहीं है. There is nobody patient anyhow. We are the real generation, so we don't have time. Nobody has time. 30 seconds, 1 minute is what we have. So this interview is going to be a little longer.
Yeah.
I hope people are engaged, but because सबको तो 1 मिनट की आदत है.
Right. No, that is really a good insight, Ankur. I mean, whatever you talked about, it's very real, very practical also we are talking about, right? Any last comments or suggestions you will give to our audience, how they should derive their CX strategy with the triangulation of this research, data and emotions which we talked about, a very nice approach which you talked about, and how they can take advantage of it. Any closing comments you want to give suggestions upon?
So I would say start experimenting.
Okay.
There are tools available now. If we also don't help those tools, like we need to support those companies as well, as large organizations or people who can afford to actually support these tools, because otherwise these tools will not develop even faster. So I would suggest, first of all, if you find some company in beta, a startup which is trying, a cap which can measure the circuits of the brain, and the gamification industry is leading that, by the way.
Yep.
They already have the caps, they already have those synapse measuring instruments which can tell you exactly when the first person shooting game, where was the person engaged and not engaged. They test all their games through that. So we should support such initiatives in India also. There are many companies like that we should support. And personal advice is add gamification to wherever you can. Then also understanding the language of the CEOs or the leaders that you're presenting to. Finances, numbers, KPIs. Let's not be afraid of that. Let's embrace that as an educational module for us. And lastly, I would say that when we disseminate the information that we have collected, we make great reports. But if you really want to push, make workshops where diverse people from that organization are present, and you're involving them in co-creation. So I think that is also some very important aspect of a researcher's job, which sometimes get missed. We send the reports, we do one big presentation to a large audience, and then the research team gone. Nahi. Take a few more steps, create smaller workshops. You can ask for money pehle se hi for it, that we will be creating this. I don't think any company will say no to it. So disseminate the information through workshops and not just one single report, which definitely has to be great.
Yes.
So that would be another thing that I felt that for us it makes a big difference.
No, pretty much you have covered, Ankur, and thank you so much for sharing all those insights, and thank you so much for sharing your time today. Thank you
so
for
much,
that. For my audience, I would summarize it in a way that if your CX strategy is not grounded with emotions, and if your research is not backed with business metrics, and your approach is not agile enough, then you are already behind in your CX strategy. So that's all for today, and thank you so much for listening.